Scott Gulbransen in the building. Scott Gulbransen, the Silver and Black Today podcast. You can get that wherever you get your pods. It is an Odyssey pod. Scott,
Yes,
man. Thanks for hopping in.
doing good, man. Just just grinding away. Of course, football season and other things going on too. We got baseball playoff. I mean, it's a great time of the year to be a sports fan, right? Basketball starting up, of course. Hockey started up, if that's your thing too. It beats that time when you get to the end of football and basketball and into summer when you don't really have a lot of options. So yeah, I've been good. I've been doing good, and now we're getting geared up for another Raiders home game against the Patriots. So the master comes in against his student once again.
Are the Raiders going to run the play where a Patriots receiver throws it backwards to a Raiders defensive lineman for a touchdown play?
I hope not, because that receiver who was involved in that play is Jacoby Myers, who's now on the Raiders.
Yeah.
So if he does it, it's going to be interesting though, now that he gets to face his old team. But yeah, it was a crazy ending last year. And if you think about it, all the storylines around it are odd. So Jacoby Myers does that. Then inexplicably the Patriots let him go because he did really well last year in New England. Raiders sign him. Okay, so he comes to Raiders. And then Chandler Jones, who picked up the ball and ran it back. Of course, we all know what happened with him. Even to this day, he's tweeting out crazy conspiracy things about the ownership of the Patriots and Josh McDaniels. So all of the people involved in that play, Mac Jones having a terrible season. So you start to see all that and you're like, wow. I was just talking to the New England guys out there on the Odyssey station, and they were saying, yeah, it's like everybody's cursed except for Jacoby Myers, who's doing pretty well. So
good for him.
Go figure.
Love to see it.
It's wild, Scott. The Raiders, of course, picked up their second win. Not they're 2-3 on the season. The Packers, solid win, nothing to write home about. But then we look at the next 5 games, and you brought up the Patriots game this weekend. Patriots are coming off their 2 worst losses in the Bill Belichick era, but it doesn't end there. It's Pats, it's Bears. You got a tough game against the Lions, but then the Giants and the Jets. It kind of feels like if they're going to do anything, it happens right now.
Absolutely.
That if the Raiders, if they're going to find a way to get back in this thing, it happens right now. Is that how you kind of feel?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I mean, this 3-game stretch especially is crucial because you're coming off a win, and it was interesting. They won the game, but Raider Nation did not feel good about it. Isn't that crazy? I mean, when your team wins, especially the Raiders who've not had a lot of wins, you'd think fans would be really excited, but they're not, because there's the offense that was so touted that is earning $120 million as a unit this year, the 5th highest in the league, can't get it going. And you have an offensive coach who can't get it going. And you have a quarterback who's come in and frankly has just fallen flat, has not done what they thought he would do. So you look at that and you think, well, geez, not too much excitement. But you're right. I think if they come out and they can beat the Patriots, and then you go on the road against Chicago. Now, Chicago's playing better ever since they got rid of Claypool. Mm-hmm. Suddenly, Justin Fields seems like he's found a new lease on life. I don't know if that's related or it's just coincidental, but he's thrown 8 touchdown passes. So I don't think it'll be an easy game, but certainly the Bears are nothing to write home about. And if they can come out of that, I don't give them much of a chance, obviously, on Monday night against Detroit. But if they can come out of that stretch, 2-1, and then go to 3-2 or 4-2 over that period, that sets them up for a better performance. But, I think fans are looking at it too and saying, we still need a franchise quarterback, guys. Mm-hmm. Are we going to do that if we win 8 or 9 games? This year you might be able to, but it's going to be dicier when everybody wants to move to the number 1 spot and get Caleb Williams, obviously.
Talking with Scott Gulbransen. Silver and Black Today is a podcast. It's an Odyssey pod. You can get that wherever you get your podcasts. Joining us here on The Insiders, James Ham, Kyle Madsen, brought to you by Jiffy Lube. I'm glad you brought that up because that's something James and I have been talking about, is like the Raiders are in the worst spot you can be in because they don't appear to be Panthers bad, but they're also not, they're not even like, I don't know, Rams good, where you think they could really compete for a playoff spot. And then once you get into the playoffs, who knows? They just seem really destined to win like 7 or 8 games and wind up in the middle of the draft and just kind of like it's, I don't want to call it a lost season, but do you feel like at some point they should either, I know you don't tank on purpose, but it feels like that would be a better direction for them than trying to go win 8.
Yeah, I think what James said is accurate here. This stretch of games will determine a lot. If they, for example, perform poorly in this softer stretch of games, then you could, and you know, they come out of it, you know, at 2-5 or 2-6, whatever it is.
Mhm.
Then I think you might see the Raiders change tact and say, well, wait a minute, we're not close. Because right now there's conversation that they're actually in pursuit of another defensive end, which tells you they believe that they still can make a play to try to get a wild card or something like that, which can be really difficult in the AFC in my view. But I think this next 4 or 5 game stretch will determine that. The only issue is you only got 3 weeks left until you have the trade deadline. So if you're starting to look at guys like that, but I think at quarterback, for example, because Jimmy Garoppolo has just been a bust for this team so far, he could turn it around, but as of right now, he hasn't. If that, then you might start to see them do things like, well, you know what? If we're 2-5, let's put in this kid we took in the 4th round, Aiden O'Connell, who struggled in his first start, but let's put him out there and just let him play and see what happens. See if we have a guy that we want to keep and develop, or do we need to think about trading up if we finish somewhere outside the top 5 to try to get one of those kind of franchise type quarterbacks. So I think this stretch will determine a lot of that and where this team goes as it relates to the rest of the season.
Yeah, Scott, it almost feels like this stretch, like it decides everything. And in a smart franchise that was on like the right path, they would probably make a move right now and see if they can trade Jimmy Garoppolo to a place like the Jets and move away from it right now. Go young, go through this stretch. You got 5 games where maybe you could win. Maybe you can go 4-1 in like the best case scenario, but that's going to hurt you. And you know it. So
Yeah.
if they were a franchise that was honest with themselves, honest with their fan base, looking out there and seeing that most of the time their fans are outnumbered greatly in their own stadium, this is probably a good moment to say, hey, let's pull the plug now. Let's not wait. We understand, you know, the coaching situation that he might be lame duck, and I get that he might want to be around a little bit longer, but you know, that he wants to stay around longer. But I still feel like this is a moment where, like, the best thing for the franchise is probably to bail.
Yeah, and you're right. It's a hard, and you've covered sports long enough to know, James. It's hard with a franchise to say to its fans, okay, you know what? We had good intentions. It's not going the way we want, so we kind of have to start selling off assets and start building for the future now, even though we're only a quarter this way this season in, if that's the way it goes, or let's say it gets to the half point. So we'll see what they do. There has not been, I don't think, any real pressure on Josh McDaniels yet. I think they went in, the owner, Mark Davis, said in the preseason, you got to be patient with this team. And it's like, well, when an owner says be patient, that to me set up the flag. Okay, they're not concerned with wins and losses this year. Now, if it's really bad and you lose the locker room and leaders are starting to defect, then I think Josh McDaniels could find himself in hotter water. But I just don't see it happening. And that's a concern for fans because Josh McDaniels has not made this team progress at the rate that you'd want him to. The offense is regressing. The offensive line is far worse than it was last year. And you only put one new guy on there. So what's going on there? What is not happening? Why is Jimmy Garoppolo not grasping the offense? Why is he not able to get that connection with his receivers that you need to really move the offense? Why can't you score 20 points? Why can't you manage the clock as a head coach? That's on the coach too. He can't manage the clock. He's a terrible game manager. He showed it again against the Packers. So that stuff is out there, but you go back to it, which is if the owner doesn't care and the owner's got some deal behind the scenes, which is, hey, you just got to get through this season and then we're going to do some more next year, then what can you do? But I think that some of it is evident that Josh McDaniels needs to show something as well over the next stretch, or he could be looking at a situation where they get to the end of the year and he's looking for new work.
That's the thing that sticks out to me as we talked to Scott Gulbransen of Silver and Black today. There's a difference between, hey, don't worry about wins and losses. If we go 3-14, we go 3-14, and just not improving, not competing, not getting the most out of your roster. And that's the thing, and then all the stuff you mentioned about game management and trying to get Jimmy Garoppolo acclimated to the offense and that not happening. It's like there's all these signs that Josh McDaniels, since starting 6-0 as a head coach in 2009, is like 13-31.
Yeah.
There's just not a lot of evidence that he's any good at this.
No, and it's a good point too, because you look, and this is what I always tell Raider fans when they get upset if I'm being critical or if they're being critical. I say, listen, look at the rest of the league. Again, as fans, people tend to get myopic. They look at their own team, maybe one of their rivals that's in their division, and that's it. But you look at the Arizona Cardinals. Look what they did. They haven't had their starting quarterback. You can argue is not the greatest quarterback, but some people like him. But anyway, they missed their quarterback. They trade off Isaiah Simmons. They trade off all these pieces. They're basically shutting it down and rebuilding. And look, they fight though in games. Look no further than Dan Campbell and the Lions. Look, everybody wanted to fire Dan Campbell the last 2 years, right? But the one thing you saw with the Lions, they had a bunch of injuries last year, but you look at the Lions and you saw a team that was deficient in talent, absolutely. But guess what? They were always fighting. They were fundamentally sound. They just got beat. With Josh McDaniels' team, that's not the case. You have more talent on offense and it's not executing. And that comes down to coaching, in my view.
I totally agree. Scott, we can't keep you all day, but what do you got this weekend? Raiders, Pats. It should be I don't know,
at least barn burner of a game.
An entertaining game, especially the way that the defensive line is now playing for the Raiders and the way that Mac Jones is playing. It could be an adventure.
It could be. I mean, I look and I was talking to the guys in New England a little bit ago, and they were just telling me that, they called it out. They said these teams so mirror each other. Not only the coaches, of course, for obvious reasons, but the quarterbacks. Mac Jones not doing well. Jimmy Garoppolo leading the league in interceptions, all that jazz. But the one thing that the Raiders do have that the Patriots do not have is some elite players at their position. If you look at the Patriots, I mean, as bad as John Gruden and Mike Mayock drafted, boy, Bill Belichick, I don't know if he's just been hanging out and playing video games when they've been drafting, but they are so bereft of talent that, you look at the Raiders and you say at home on this one, it's the first time since week 1 I'm actually going to pick them. I think they will win this one. Because of the improvement on defense we saw over the last 2 weeks. They held the Chargers and the Packers to 1 touchdown in 6 quarters. Now, again, Packers not so great, Chargers pretty good offense, and they were able to shut down Justin Herbert. So I think that they'll win this one, and they have to win this one, especially since it's at home and they're going on the road here against the Bears next week.
I think if they lose to the Patriots, Scott, I think that Josh McDaniels just needs to get on the plane with the Patriots and head back with them and
try to help them turn around their situation.
Yeah. I think that's what needs to happen. Scott Gulbransen, Silver and Black Today. It's an Odyssey podcast. You can listen to that wherever you get your podcast, and of course on the free Odyssey app. Scott, thanks so much for hopping on and kicking off week 6 with us.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a great weekend now.